At my husband's funeral, my daughter-in-law whispered, "She's not family." 3 days later, I read the will aloud, and she turned pale at the $19.00 M clause. The church smelled of lilies and formality. Everything looked immaculate. My husband would have hated it. He once told me he wanted a simple goodbye, but the children insisted on something respectable. I stood beside his casket, fingers trembling slightly as I tucked a single white rose into his folded hands. I barely heard the whisper, but the venom in it sliced cleaner than any scream. "She's not family," Alicia said. "She's just a leftover from a nurse's mistake. Let her say goodbye like a hospice ghost." Her words dripped from her lips into the silence like poison into still water. I froze, the rose still between my fingers. I could feel their eyes, dozens of them, watching me but saying nothing. Not my son, not his sister, not a single soul defended me. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I did not flinch, not even when Alicia's voice echoed louder in my head than the priest's prayers. I simply placed the rose down, turned, and walked slowly back to the pew. I sat at the end, near the aisle, like a forgotten guest. Alicia wore a skin-tight black dress with a thigh slit that could rival a movie premiere. Her shoes were red at my husband's funeral. She had always liked to perform. Even grief became her stage. Her perfectly painted lips curled with amusement every time someone turned to look at her. She basked in it. When the ceremony ended, I walked out last. I passed under the arched doors of the church, let the breeze hit my face, and just tried to breathe. That was when I saw it. Alicia stood near the black SUV, laughing with her friends, holding her clutch loosely. When she opened it to pull out lipstick, I saw it. My wedding ring, the one that had been removed from my husband's finger in the hospital before they prepared his body. It should have been returned to me, but it had somehow ended up in her possession. I approached quietly. "That ring," I said. "It belonged to me." She turned slowly, her lips still curled in amusement. "He wanted me to have it," she said. "I was the real family in the end." My hands shook, not from rage, but something worse. Betrayal. I had sat by that man's side for 6 years straight, through every seizure, every moment of lucidity, every night of silence. I had wiped blood from his mouth, massaged his feet when they cramped, memorized every fluctuation of his breathing. And now I was just a relic, a side note to be erased. I said nothing more. I walked to my car, locked the doors, and drove home in silence. The house was colder than I remembered. I walked straight into the closet, pulled away the loose floorboard beneath my slippers, and reached into the space only I knew. The safe opened with a click. Inside were 2 things, a velvet pouch with a key and a brown folder marked only with the letter J. It had been 10 days before he passed when he asked me to open that safe. His hand trembled as he passed the code to me, scribbled in crooked handwriting on the back of a napkin. "Use it if they forget who you are," he whispered. "This is your proof." I had not read the folder that night. I had not wanted to. I was grieving him while he was still breathing. But now I opened it. There it was. The trust transfer, notarized and signed, giving me power of attorney over every asset, effective immediately upon his death. The signature was unmistakably his, and beneath that, another form, drafted just days later, rewriting the entire estate. I was the beneficiary, not the children. Not the son who had stopped calling, not the daughter who only texted when she needed to double-check insurance. Me. The folder felt heavier in my hands than I remembered, perhaps because now it carried the weight of proof that I was not a ghost, that I was not some sad woman wandering hospital halls with a martyr complex, that I had loved him, that he had loved me. I stared at the paperwork for a long time. Then I locked it back inside, kissed the velvet pouch holding our old house key, and made tea. That night, I did not cry. Not because it didn't hurt, it did, but because I knew that pain had a shape now. It had a name, and soon it would have a reckoning. 3 days, that was all I needed. 3 days to plan the reading. 3 days to choose the church, 3 days to practice the words, not his will, mine, and every single person who had watched me crumble beside that casket without so much as reaching for my hand, they would be there, and they would listen, because this time the whisper would not be Alicia's. It would be mine, and I would not speak it alone. I would let the truth echo for me. And this time they would hear me, all of them. I met him on a Tuesday night that smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. He had come in by ambulance, half-conscious, slurred speech, one side of his face drooping. A stroke, the kind that steals half your body and most of your pride. He had no visitors, no emergency contacts listed, just a watch on his wrist, worth more than my car, and a briefcase no one dared open. I was the night nurse, the one who volunteered for the graveyard shifts because no one else wanted to clean up after strangers at 3 a.m. I sat by his bed for hours, adjusting IVs, changing bedding, making sure he did not choke on his own saliva. The first words he ever said to me were, "You've got patient hands." I told him it was because I had been broken before. He recovered slowly. It took weeks before he could feed himself, months before he could walk. During that time, I learned his name, his habits, and the way he liked his soup, just slightly salty. What I did not learn, what he never told me, was how wealthy he was. He never flaunted anything. He wore simple clothes, read the newspaper, never once pulled rank in the hospital. I found out from another nurse that he owned 3 companies and once funded the entire cancer wing downtown. Still, I treated him like any other patient, and when he went home, alone, stiff, and full of unspoken things, I did not expect to see him again. But he came back, not as a patient, but as a man. He showed up at my break room door one rainy Thursday holding a grocery bag of soup containers and a thermos. I figured if I made it salty enough, you'd sit with me for 15 minutes. I laughed. Then I sat. That became our ritual. He brought soup every week, and I pretended I was not falling in love with someone who saw past my uniform and into the quiet parts of me no one had touched in years. After 6 years, 6 years of dinners, of dog walks, of learning to dance again despite a bad knee, he asked me to marry him. He did not kneel. He was afraid he would not get back up, but his voice was soft, full of a kind of trembling I had never seen in him. "You're the reason I'm still alive," he said. "I want the rest of that life to be with you." I said yes, even though I was terrified. Terrified because I had never asked for anything, never taken a dime. I had rejected every expensive gift he offered, told him I did not want my name on any property or account. I loved him, not his legacy. But love does not protect you from jealousy. When the family found out, it was not a celebration, it was an interrogation. My stepson, his only son, stared at me across the dinner table and asked, "So what's the plan? Marry him, inherit everything, then sell off the company?" I had never felt dirtier. Alicia, his wife, said nothing then, just sipped her wine and smirked. But things got worse in 2020. During the pandemic, my husband's health started to decline again. The lockdowns meant no visits. I was the only one who could be near him, care for him, clean him. And when he told me he wanted to transfer the beach house to his son to make him feel responsible, I said no. I did not trust them. Alicia had used his credit card to buy Chanel handbags in the middle of a PPE shortage. They had never once come to check on him during those long isolation nights. I remember telling him, let him earn it, not inherit it like a toy. Alicia found out. I do not know how. Maybe the lawyers said something. But after that, her mask came off. "She's a nurse with a savior complex," she told someone at a party. I know because it was recorded and sent to me anonymously. The only disease in this house is her. I kept that recording, not out of spite, out of caution. From then on, Alicia did not hide her disdain. She called me the Florence Nightingale fraud, told mutual friends I had manipulated an old man on his deathbed, that I was a hospice worker who married into a will. She called me leftover replacement wife, and once, behind my back but within earshot, professional caretaker turned full-time leech. And yet I stayed silent, because my husband loved them, and I loved him. He asked me once if it bothered me. I told him, I have been hated for less, I can endure it for love. He held my hand and whispered, "Then let me endure it for justice." That was the day he began working on the trust. We kept it private, just the two of us and a notary he trusted. I refused to be in the room when he signed anything. I did not want to be accused of influence, but I knew what he was doing. He was writing everything, not to punish, but to preserve. His words stayed with me. Money does not belong to the loudest voices. It belongs to the quiet hands that held you up when no one else would. When he died, Alicia wore that smug look as if she had already spent the inheritance. She thought she had won, because people like her always do, until the day they don't. 3 days after the funeral, I sent out invitations. Nothing fancy, just a note that said, "In honor of his last wishes, please gather at St. Mary's Chapel for the public reading of his will." Same place we had been married, same pews we had prayed in, when his hands were still strong enough to hold mine. They all came, dressed in their best grief. Alicia arrived first. She wore the same red bottom heels from the funeral, her hair pulled tight, lips painted a shade too bold for mourning. She took the front row seat, legs crossed, confidence practically radiating off her. The son, my stepson, sat beside her, glancing at his watch like this was a formality before brunch. They all thought this was going to be easy, that the money, the houses, the legacy would just land where they believed it belonged. But as I stood at the pulpit with the mahogany folder in my hands, I looked out at them, not as a nurse, not as a second wife, not as a ghost from hospice, but as the keeper of truth. I opened the folder. "This," I began, "is not his will." You could feel the air get sucked from the room. "This is mine." Alicia let out a short, smug laugh. "What, Nadine? A poem? Another one of your little journal entries?" I smiled gently, then turned to the notary seated behind me, an older woman with silver hair and the quiet authority of someone who had seen decades of human messiness. She nodded. "This," I continued, "is the updated trust, signed and notarized 10 days before he passed. A legal transfer of all assets, properties, investments, accounts." Alicia stood up, nearly knocking her purse over. "That's ridiculous! He was barely conscious the week before he died." "On the contrary," the notary said calmly, rising from her chair. "He was lucid, communicative, and voluntarily signed the documents in my presence. Here are the certified records and time-stamped video footage." I pulled out the envelope and handed it to the notary, who laid the copies out on the table beside me. Alicia looked at her husband, my stepson, for support, but he was pale, blinking rapidly. "He was going to leave everything to us," she insisted. "He told us that over dinner in March." "Then perhaps," I said softly, "you should have eaten with him more often than once every 4 months." The chapel was silent. Even the stained glass windows seemed to lean in closer. I unfolded the next page. "Effective immediately, I am the sole beneficiary of his estate, which includes liquid assets totaling approximately $19 million. Gasps, soft and sharp. One man in the back choked on his breath. I held up a hand. "But I have no intention of keeping it." Alicia froze. I looked at her. Straight in the eye, her lips parted like she was ready to speak, but nothing came out. I continued. $12 million will be transferred to the Florida Heritage Foundation to build what my husband called the Widow's Justice House, a sanctuary for senior women abandoned or mistreated by their own families. Alicia sat down. Hard. $3 million will be allocated to scholarships under the name Nurse Not Gold Digger to support underprivileged nursing students who still believe in compassion over commission. I paused, letting that settle in their stomachs. "And the final $4 million, I said, voice steady, will go to someone my husband respected deeply, his former wife. Because when she found out we were in love, she told him, 'If she makes you smile again, then I'm glad you lived long enough to find her.'" The gasp from Alicia this time wasn't shock, it was betrayal. She had spent years belittling the first wife, mocking her wrinkles, calling her yesterday's chapter. I glanced at the front row. My stepson was leaning forward now, fists clenched, red-faced. "This is manipulation. She got him to change everything when he was vulnerable." The notary spoke again, firm and composed. "Mr. Lockhart had full capacity. You're welcome to contest, but I must warn you, the documents include a clause that redirects any challenged share to the Florida Widows Trust. In short, try to fight it, and you'll lose more." Alicia's face had drained of all color. She whispered, "You can't do this. You're not family." I leaned forward. "You're right. I'm not the kind of family who steals a dead man's wedding ring and hides it in a $2,000 0-cent purse." Her eyes widened. Yes, I knew. I had seen the ring. I had retrieved it after the funeral, when she went to the restroom, leaving her bag open on the pew. She must have thought I would be too numb to notice. She was wrong. That ring now sat back in its velvet box, next to our wedding photo, where it belonged. I looked around at the chapel, the same place he had called me his reason, the same place I promised to stand by him, even when I had been called every name except what I really was, his wife. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far beyond the basement. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I stood at the pulpit with the same tremble I always felt before speaking, but this time it was steady. No longer a heart pounding in sorrow, but a heart balanced on the edge of justice. I looked out at the faces before me. Alicia, still radiant in her costume of grief. Her husband, the man who hated my candor, clenched fists in his lap. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for what they assumed would be my tears, but I held them back. Then I began. "Here is the shock," I said softly, voice unwavering. $12 million of his estate will go to build the Widow's Justice House, a sanctuary for women who, like me, were cast away in familiar places. The silence was sudden, heavy. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the faint echo of the ocean outside, as if the chapel itself gasped in disbelief. I continued. $3 million will form the Nurse Not Gold Diggers Scholarship. It will support nursing students from humble backgrounds, those who choose to heal, not manipulate. It was as though Alicia had swallowed razor blades. Her eyes darted to the corners of the room, unstable as she searched for support. But none came. I paused. And then I delivered the final blow. And the remaining $4 million, my voice dropped, echoes humming in the walnut beams, will be given to someone my husband admired, even loved, in a way no one ever understood. His former wife. The one, he said, "If she makes me smile again, I will not stop loving her." The tension snapped all at once. Alicia lurched forward, clutching her chest as though I'd shot an arrow between her ribs. Her mouth opened, shut, opened again. "I did not expect that," she croaked. My stepson, her husband, stared at me, face pale. He had been the presumptive heir. Not anymore. "The woman you resent," I said quietly, lovingly released him when he found love again. Alicia looked away. The chapel was still. I let the words settle. Then I stepped down from the pulpit and closed the folder. With the unfulfilled weight of 17 million eyes watching, $19 million unclaimed, love made tangible in every line. Afterward, someone called it poetic. Another called it vengeance. To me, it was just justice. Alicia did not stay for the reception that followed. She slipped out, clicking heels and broken expectations, trailing whispers of entitlement and contempt. But as I walked through those old church doors, I felt the weight of 19 million reasons to be proud. Not wealthy, not powerful, but profoundly remembered. Profoundly just. I had not meant for it to go public. The reading of the will was supposed to be private, sacred, final. But somehow, maybe it was the echo of the church, or the phone Alicia slipped out to check mid-ceremony, someone had been recording. And they caught it all. The rose in my hand, her whisper to her friend, "She's not family." The way she smirked. The way I stared, frozen. And then, the will. The video hit the internet like lightning touches dry grass. The clip was only 48 seconds, but that was all it took. TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, YouTube compilations. One headline read, "Florida daughter-in-law calls widow hospice ghost, loses $19.00 M in real time." A meme went viral, with Alicia's face overlaid by her own words, "She's not family," captioned with, "She's not rich either." They found everything. And screenshots of Alicia's PR campaigns, where she touted family values and legacy of love. Clips of her fundraising speeches for the private school board she chaired, now an irony no one could resist. And in the center of the storm, the 19 million she never saw. The 19 million she mocked out of her own hands. Comment after comment poured in. She called the widow leftover and left with nothing. She could have smiled and been kind. Instead, she's a #God bless Nurse Nadine. This is what earned grace looks like. I would be lying if I said it did not sting a little to have my grief turned into internet content. But the sting faded each time I saw women commenting. This gave me the courage to stand up to my own daughter-in-law. Thank you for showing us what quiet strength looks like. Meanwhile, Alicia's world crumbled. The school board asked her to step down quietly, then leaked her resignation to save face. A luxury brand dropped her from their influencer roster within hours. Even her curated parenting blog, once full of staged holiday breakfasts and yoga with toddlers reels, was down to 3 bitter posts and a ghost following. Her husband, my stepson, tried to intervene. He made calls, sent emails, even consulted a lawyer about contesting the will. But the moment they proved he stood by her, when she said those words, it was over. Florida courts look poorly upon men who enable cruelty, especially when it is on camera. His name was removed from consideration for co-trustee, his power of attorney invalidated, his appeal dismissed. And I sat on the porch of my cottage, the one with peeling white shutters and a garden I had replanted myself, sipping iced tea and watching the rain. For the first time in years, silence welcomed me, and when I received a letter from a young woman in Arizona, a nursing student who wrote, "Your story reminded me that compassion is never wasted. You made me believe I could make it through school." I pressed the page to my heart. They had judged me a gold digger, a leftover, a mistake from hospice. But the world finally had spoken, and it said, no, she is grace. She is family. She is justice. 3 days after the funeral firestorm, after the headlines died down but the whispers still echoed, a letter arrived. It came not through email, not typed or printed, but handwritten, on soft cream stationery, sealed with a wax crest I hadn't seen in decades. From her. I recognized the handwriting before I even opened the envelope. Slanted, deliberate, neat. There had only ever been one woman in his life who wrote like that. His first wife. The woman Alicia used to call the bitter shadow, behind every family photo. And yet there she was now, reaching out to me. The first lines made my throat close. He chose love, and love chose justice. My hands shook. I watched from afar when you married him. No, not with jealousy, with disbelief. That a man who once walked through life like marble had found softness again. I sat down at the kitchen table. I know you took care of him when no one else did. I know he got to laugh again because of you, and I also know what it cost you to keep your head high in a house that never opened its doors to you. The tears came without warning. Not sobs, just silent, steady drops like the Florida rain in spring. Warm, cleansing. I have no regrets that he left this world with you beside him. I do, however, have one regret I cannot silence. My breath hitched as I read the next lines. I regret that our son, my son, stood silent when his wife spat on the love his father chose. I regret that he sat while she stood on your dignity, that he forgot what it means to be a man with a spine. That sentence cut deeper than anything Alicia had ever said, because it came from a mother about her own child, and because it was true. You may not share blood with him, but you are the only one who honored his father's heart, and that makes you more family than they will ever be. I covered my face with my hands. I had endured so many years of being whispered about, judged, labeled, mocked. But in this letter, I was seen, not as a mistake, not as a burden, not as leftover, but as someone who had loved. The letter closed with just 3 lines. I hope this brings you peace, and if not, I hope it brings you pride, because you, Nadine, are not forgotten. I pressed the paper to my chest, not to my heart, no, that would have been too easy, to my ribs, where I had learned to carry weight silently, where I had kept dignity wrapped tight around disappointment. I didn't cry out of grief. I cried because after everything, after the eyes that turned away, the insults that clung to me like smoke, the ring stolen from his hand, someone finally saw me. Not through the lens of suspicion, not as a nurse who stayed too long, but as a woman who chose to stay when no one else would. That evening, I folded the letter gently and placed it inside the drawer with our wedding photo. I did not text anyone. I did not post it. I did not even mention it to Lan, the kind volunteer who helped me organize the Justice House files every Tuesday. Some things are not meant for display. Some things are sacred because they were never said in public. I had no need to parade this proof of character. I had already lived it. But in the quiet hum of that night, as the crickets chirped and the lights dimmed inside the little house I had rebuilt, I whispered 4 words out loud. Thank you for seeing me. And for the first time since he passed, I felt like I was not alone in remembering the man I loved, or in knowing that what we built, even without blood or titles, was real and righteous and worthy. I never imagined I would be called teacher again at 79, but here I am, every Saturday evening, seated in front of 12 folding chairs, inside the sunflower-painted hall of Justice House, wearing my old cardigan and a name tag that reads, Ms. Nadine-Self-Worth, 101. My students, widows, mostly. Some had their houses taken by greedy sons, others were called dead weight by daughters-in-law. A few arrived straight from the back seat of pickup trucks, left by grandkids too busy for goodbyes. Each one wears the same look I once wore myself, dignity hanging by a thread. And yet, every week I see that thread thicken, stitch by stitch, as they learn to sew again, to speak again, to matter again. Justice House was built on a hill just north of Tampa, not far from where his ashes rest. $12 million built the walls, but the foundation? That was built from silence, turned into strength. And in the cottage next to it, my cottage, I keep a wall of letters, hundreds, maybe more, every inch of that wall covered in handwritten notes, drawings, Polaroids, even crocheted hearts, all sent from women I've never met, but who saw my story. One letter, in shaky blue ink, reads, My daughter kicked me out, said she didn't need dead energy in her new yoga room. But your story helped me walk tall again. I started baking for the church. They now call me the Lemon Bar Queen. Another. My own son left me at a bus stop, but I saw what you did on the news. I stood up to my landlord and got a place of my own. Thank you, Miss Nadine. And the one that made me laugh out loud. You are the real queen of Florida. Even my chihuahua stopped barking when your clip came on the news. She respects royalty, clearly. Sometimes I wonder what Alicia thinks when she sees them. Because yes, every major outlet covered the fallout. The woman who said, she's not family, was now the face of every article titled, She inherited dignity, not just dollars. Alicia, from what I hear, moved to Georgia. Tried launching a podcast about grief. It tanked after episode 2, when the internet reminded her what she whispered at a funeral. Some phrases don't fade, they haunt. Meanwhile, I keep living. One of the volunteers, a sprightly woman named Gloria, always jokes, Nadine, you're the Beyoncé of widows. I just laugh and say, only if Beyoncé taught crochet on Sundays. Justice, I've learned, isn't about revenge. It's about replanting. Not uprooting people for the pain they caused, but creating places where that pain doesn't grow anymore. That's what Justice House became. There's a rose bush just outside the west window. It was the first thing planted here. We call it quietest, after a woman who arrived with nothing but a grocery bag full of expired medicine and one velvet dress from 1981. She wore that dress to our Christmas tea. Said she hadn't felt like a lady in 40 years. I told her, Edith, you're not just a lady. You're a lesson. She didn't cry. She nodded. Some wounds don't need salt to sting, just sunlight to heal. Every night I light one candle by my bedside. Not for him, not anymore, but for me. For the woman I became. For the girl who never stopped believing that kindness, however old, however mocked, still has power. In my drawer, I keep that same letter from his ex-wife, yellowed now at the corners. Sometimes I reread it, not because I need validation, but because it reminds me that forgiveness can bloom even in the garden of grief. Some nights I sit outside with a cup of tea, watching the lights flicker from Justice House. I hear laughter, stories, occasionally a round of applause, and I think to myself, she may have whispered, she's not family. But now the world knows. I became home. I never liked clutter, but today, my small oak table holds 3 things I'll never move: a framed wedding photo, faded but warm, a handwritten letter, folded with care, and a single white rose in a mason jar. I place the frame gently. It's the photo from our small church wedding, his hand trembling as he placed the ring on mine. We were older than most newlyweds, with more laugh lines than champagne bubbles, but it was real. And real things, no matter how quiet, echo forever. Beside it is her letter, the one from his ex-wife, the one that reminded me grace can come from the most unexpected corners. He chose love, and love chose justice. I have no regrets, except watching my son forget what dignity looks like. I read it aloud once a month. It reminds me I was never wrong to choose silence over screaming, patience over performance, love over validation. Outside, the Florida sun begins its slow descent, casting honey-colored shadows across the floor. The cottage smells like lemon oil and old books. I sit in my favorite chair, the one with floral arms and slightly squeaky legs, and I exhale. Today marks 1 year since the will was read, since Alicia's whisper became a headline, since I went from not family to legacy bearer. I sip my tea. Each morning as I brew my mint tea, I pause, not just to sip but to honor the memory of what we built in silence. Love wasn't flashy, it was steadfast. It was staying through seizures and silent nights. Now, that quiet love becomes sanctuary through every brick of Justice House. And, as if on cue, my phone lights up with a notification. Alicia is live. I tap it, more curious than cruel. She's in a dim room, ring light too bright, casting harsh shadows on her now gaunt face. Behind her, rows of handbags and plastic bins scream desperation louder than her voice ever could. "Hi everyone," she chirps, too cheerful. "Tonight we have limited edition pre-owned luxury items, like new." In the comments, the past roars louder than any price tag. Is that the woman who called her husband's wife a hospice ghost? How's that $19.00 M clause treating you? Justice House says hi. Alicia fakes a smile, then quickly blocks comments. But the stream is already being screen recorded, shared, reposted. The internet doesn't forget. Especially not when you whispered poison at a funeral and expected the world to drink. I turn it off. Not out of pity, but because I have better things to hear. From the other room, I hear the giggles of 2 residents from Justice House, trying on second-hand boas and arguing about what flavor cupcake to bake for Saturday's group. They're louder than usual. I love that. Because this house was built for noise, for the laughter of women once silenced, for the conversations of those once ignored, for the ghosts like me who were told they weren't family. I smile, and I whisper just to myself, I was called a ghost, but even ghosts deserve love. And I gave it all to those who never forgot how to say thank you. A knock at the door. It's Gloria, holding a stack of mail in a group. "Another batch for the wall," she says. I take the envelopes. Postmarked from Iowa, Texas, even Alaska. Each one, a voice in the choir of gratitude that's built this strange, beautiful second chapter of mine. Later, as dusk folds over the house, I light a candle beside the rose. Its flame flickers gently, catching the edges of our wedding photo. I don't speak to him often anymore, not like I used to. But tonight I lean in close. "You chose love," I whisper. "And love chose justice." And then, with steady hands, I trace the words I've stitched into every lesson I teach, every letter I answer, every hug I give to those trembling with shame. That's all the family I ever needed. I suppose this is the true epilogue of my life. Years have passed since I placed that final candle beside the wedding photo, whispering, "That's all the family I ever needed." The flame is still steady, though the rose has long wilted, simply because its purpose wasn't decor, but remembrance. Justice House stands now, not as a house, but as a promise. Outside the cottage window, new families rise with its walls, not only widows, but abandoned mothers, older teachers, people who felt erased by life, who found a seat here. Sometimes I wonder, would they have seen me as home? I still live next door in the same modest cottage. It has become a beacon of warmth, not of money. My garden is wild, roses, lavender, marigold, all tangled in friendly chaos. It carries the scents of laughter and tea and the soft rhythms of gentle afternoons. Every morning, I make myself a cup of mint tea, then visit the wall of letters. The collection grew from hundreds to thousands. University students, grief counselors, women who rediscovered their voice. One letter that always finds me starts, "I found your story when I was planning to end it all. Your strength gave me one more reason to stay." I place it where I can see it. Life is not saved by grand gestures, but by simple messages. You matter. You are seen. Sometimes the press reminds the world of Justice House's story. Documentaries, morning shows. There was even a short feature on an arts channel titled "The Widow Who Became a Sanctuary." I don't watch, because I know the truth is quieter. It's in the echo of broken women laughing again, in the scent of baking bread when they throw open the windows, and the wrinkles of joy by the front door. My stepson visited once, not to apologize, but to donate books to the library in Justice House. His words were awkward. "Mom, even after everything, thank you." I touched his arm. "You're always welcome here." He stayed for 2 cups of tea. When he left, he said, "I'm starting therapy." That was all the apology I needed. Alicia never reached out. Rumor has it she moved states, tried real estate flipping, possibly with someone on the side. But I don't need to know. Narratives run deeper than headlines, and hers ended at a ring light. Meanwhile, there have been weddings in Justice House, quiet gatherings beneath the rose awning. Women who got second chances found love someone called sister. The mayor once officiated a vow renewal there. For the women of Fort Lauderdale, may they ever remember that courage is a finer jewel than any heirloom. I wore my old wedding dress, altered by Gloria to fit my bones. It was soft blue, not garish, but hopeful. I don't dream in glass slippers anymore. I dream of quiet tables, worn hands, and futures shaped by kindness. One Sunday evening, I found a letter slid under my door. No envelope, no name. Just 4 words in careful looping script. "You made us brave." I cried harder than I have in a decade. Not tears of sorrow, but of belonging. Because they saw me before I was famous, before my silent grief, before the $14 million headline. They saw me when I was just afraid and alone. Now I stand here, with a second life blooming where others burned. Where they trampled silence, I planted community. Where they called me ghost, I built a home. Where they saw leftover, I became legacy. One thing I've learned is that silence isn't weakness, it's reserve. It is where character waits until the moment to stand. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know each one is a gift. So I keep living. Gentle, stubborn, grateful. I keep teaching. I keep reading letters. I keep lighting that candle. Because ghosts, real or imagined, deserve love. But better yet, they deserve to know they deserved it all along. And every day more women pass through, lit with that truth. They come here searching for worth, and find they are already walking in it. If this story touched your heart, if justice served cold, tasted just right today, don't forget to hit that hype button and subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Every story we share is a reminder: kindness matters, love endures, and no one who gives selflessly is ever truly forgotten. We believe in lifting the quiet voices, and your support helps them echo further than anyone ever thought possible. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the strongest revenge is building something beautiful in silence.